Thank you for joining us tonight. Just want to say again, thank you for tuning in to the Maintain Right series. Tonight, we're going to get to know your wood windows with Valerie and Gus from NOLA Wood Windows. My name is Anna Pernis. I am the Director of Conservation and Education with the PRC. We are proud to be a resource for homeowners to empower them with the knowledge they need to spot potential problems in their historic houses and find ways to address them, including who to call when the problem becomes needs a professional. With the generous support from the Louisiana State Historic Preservation Office and the Joanna Favreau Fund for Historic Preservation of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Maintain Right will be launching a new website, free classes through the summer, and short videos through our social media and YouTube. Please make sure to tune in and join us for all of that. I also want to say thank you to all the members and donors of the PRC who make our work to preserve New Orleans historic architecture, neighborhoods, and cultural identity possible all year long. We are a 501c3 nonprofit and rely on the support of our members and donors to do the work to protect the authenticity of our historic city. This June, we are also hosting our Shotgun House Month. So please check out our event schedule at the prcno.org to find house tour dates and trivia nights. We are asking that viewers of the Shotgun House tours consider a $25 donation. You can donate at our website, and these donations made will go directly to fund the PRC's Innovative Revival Grants Program, which makes free repairs to low-income families in the Treme neighborhood. The donors that of $25 and more will receive a complimentary copy of a digital design guide filled with 3D tours and detailed information about the featured houses. While you're on the website, we've also got fun merchandise that's on sale through the month of June. So please make sure to check out some of the t-shirts, books, masks, and everything is 20% off. And if you are not already a member, please consider joining. The last thing I want to say is that through the webinar, we won't be able to see you. So please make sure to submit any questions throughout the discussion via our Q&A chat or the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen. I'll be monitoring the questions and we will get the chance to relay them through the program. Valerie and Gus are going to go through some of the window conditions, common problems, repairs, replacements. So I'm excited to get started with that. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to them and let them share their screen. And please make sure to submit those questions.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to the PRC for providing us the opportunity to help educate a little bit this evening. So, and we appreciate everybody that is joining in or watching later. We hope that this is valuable and you learn something from this that helps with preserving your wooden windows. So I think one of the pieces that's important to us, and a lot of the things that we hear from folks that we're talking to about their windows, is that their real focus is on environmentally friendly and green, and how do you be more energy efficient. And I think it's important to kind of highlight that the greenest building that there is the one that's already built, and that the work that goes into restoration creates less waste than the work that happens through replacing windows. I think this picture tells a great story, in that the second story windows are original and are still at the home, where the first floor windows have been replaced, and the character difference between the top and the bottom is a stark comparison. A little bit about us. We got into window restoration because we owned an old double shotgun in the Carrollton neighborhood here in New Orleans, and needed to restore our own windows. So through our passion for and being a lover of an old home, we decided that restoring our windows led to the need of, there weren't enough people in the city, let alone in the country, that do the work that we do. And we solely focus on windows and doors for our business. So this was the main driver behind why we do what we do from that side. And a little bit about, as we're going through the presentation and talking, we wanted to highlight a few of the components of the window and kind of give an overview that even though when you look at a window, it seems very simple, there's a lot of pieces and components that go into your window. So as we're going through and we're talking about condition and looking at different things, you'll hear us mention the rail, which is at the top and the bottom, you know, the style, which is down the side of your window sashes, the muntins, which are the component that divides the lights or where the panes of glass are, the meeting rails, where the window locks together in the center, and the parting bead, which is the piece that separates the top and bottom sash to make everything nice and tight.
So here you have a picture of a window that we're restoring and that we had disassembled. Later on, we have a video showing me disassembling this window. But the point of this is to show you that the old windows can be taken apart, excuse me, and the pieces that are rotten or damaged can be replaced, and the window can be, the sash of the window can be rebuilt. Here's the video I was talking about. Right here, I'm removing the meeting rail from the stiles, and there's a button coming out, and there's a stile coming off the bottom rail. And common places of problems are your button bars and the bottom, and sometimes the meeting rails. All that can be replaced. We remilled them in the past and replaced just that one part and put everything back together. Again, trying to preserve as much as we can.
Yeah, the windows are almost built to just be repurposed. It seems like they're like shown in the video, you know, just a few hits of your hammer and you're taking those structural pieces apart and able to replace anything that goes in there.
Now, one thing that we skipped, they are held together, and this particular sash was held together with steel pins. When I do go back and put it back together, I will pin it with using overgrowth wood, and it'll be back together and good as new. So this other window, the point of it is to show you that things can get pretty bad and they still can be restored. This is a casement window that Hurricane Zeta destroyed, and we basically remilled and got it back to going. And we, again, trying to preserve as much as we can. We just replaced the missing pieces. It can be pretty bad, and we can get it back going. Let's see if they can be restored.
And is this a project you're currently working on?
No, that we completed that project a month ago. Yeah, we have one similar, but I didn't get a picture of that. So here, the picture on the right, we don't like caulk, and that sash on the top sash on the right is caulked in place. And what happens is the caulk keeps all the moisture into your sash. And that's what ends up leading to your deterioration, is that wood stays wet, it can never dry out. I know that a lot of people say that you should caulk windows in place if you're not going to open and close them. Don't do that.
And the window on the left, I think, you know, we're diving into a little bit of the window condition. So as we go through this, we're going to start with some of the windows that are in the worst condition, and then walk through like worst to best to kind of give some pieces of, like, as you're looking at your own windows, things to look out for, seeing them in different states of you know, being ready or prepared for maintenance. That way you've got a better understanding of knowing, like, okay, if you look at it, you may think that it's terrible and it needs to be replaced, when really it's actually not at that level just yet. And you may be at a point where, hey, it's time for a little bit of maintenance, and how to handle that. So for the window on the left, I think one of the big pieces, we have a lot of wasps, we have a lot of dirt daubers, we have a lot of insects that love attaching themselves to wood. It's always good to do a walk around and like remove any of that when you see it on your home. They can do damage. There are some of those creatures that like to eat wood. So it's always good to make sure that, you know, you're keeping an eye on that and protecting from the pests. And I think the other piece on this is that in one of the muntins, like the paint has started to, you know, it's gone, deteriorated, but the glazing is still there. So this is at a point where it can be maintained. Like, it just needs to be cleaned up and then primed and then painted. to reseal the glazing, the water seal on that glazing, and then that buys you another, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever period of time that paint will last.
Yeah, and I think one of the good things about like noticing those kinds of repairs early on is that this is something that maybe can sometimes be handled in place. You won't have to remove the whole sash to make those changes. And because a lot of people get concerned about, I can't live without my window sash or the piece of plywood, how long is it going to take? But some of these repairs, if you get to them early enough, can be done in place, and you don't have to worry about losing that sash or the light in your room. I do have a couple questions already. Just one of the things is that if Gus can speak up when he's presenting, or just get closer to the computer a little bit. But the other part was we have a couple things. So we have what if the rope is old? Do you recommend replacing the ropes with chain or with new rope, the cords?
If you already have sash cord, just replace it with sash cord. Now, the chain requires a special pulley cord. It's a little more flat than oval. So if you have sash cord, replace it with sash cord.
All right. Let's see. That's where we're good for now. It was mostly sound. So just speak up, and then we could talk about insulating windows. I just want to get through your conditions part.
Okay, so right here, this sash on the left, actually this is the sash I have in the shop. This sash right here, the median rail which is circle, has failed because of caulk. The glazing failed at one point in time. It wasn't addressed. And then when it was addressed with caulk. Caulk kept the moisture in the wood, and now it has a total failure. In addition to that, the muttons, they are, if you look at the top, I'd say in the middle of that sash on the left-hand side, most of that little fin for that mutton is gone. So that's a total, that sash right there is going to be a total rebuild. The window on the right, the middle right there, the middle oval, the little blue oval circle right there where all the muttons meet, the fins are totally gone there. Those 4 panes of glass right there are being held together with only caulk and whatever caulk they may have had in the glazing rabbit. So this is an example. This is why we preach against caulk, because of that. Where Valerie had talked about the picture earlier where they were missing a little paint off of the glazing. If that would, in this situation, if that was addressed at that point with just primer and paint to the glazing, we could have prevented this. And then on this particular sash, on the bottom right-hand side, all the way in the corner, you see the parting bead has been cut. I don't know what they did, but anyway, the parting bead was cut, and then you can see the little black where it's showing the hole going straight into the house. So this particular sash was cut so much that it ended up just falling out, and we had to add to it to make it stay in there. I don't know, did you highlight the top right-hand side? Okay, on the top right-hand side, you see it, a little darkness. I don't know if you can see the cursor where Valerie's showing.
We could see the cursor.
Yep. So right there showing you that, I mean, that's the side of the sash. So the side of, if you have a sash that looks like this, your sash is supposed to go all the way behind your parting bead. So that's something to look out for too.
So those gaps. We actually got a good question because we're so used to saying glazing. What is, they're asking what is glazing?
Okay. So glazing it isn't caulk. I know it's hard. It's a compound that the glass is bedded into and creates, and then after that on the outside is the part where you would touch. You want to go back to the picture you were talking about with the missing paint?
And I think what's confusing too is that sometimes people reference the paint as glazing, but when we're talking about it here, we're really talking about the glazing putty, which is what's keeping those pieces of glass in place. So, and maybe you could see a little better there where it's missing on that left sash.
So that has like a grayish color to it. Glazing can have a white color to it. I would say this is pretty close to original. So this particular glass, excuse me, the sash, if they were to prime and paint that, they won't get to the caulk phase, and that's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent this here.
Right.
So I think
Yeah, because, oh, go ahead.
the question about what is glazing, right? That is, there's a couple of types, right? There's an elastomeric glazing that's, you know, made from petroleum-based components. And then there is the linseed, traditional linseed oil, putty. So, and you'll hear it interchanged, right? So we call it putty or glazing. It's used interchangeably, but it's that material that provides the water seal. So it's what the glass sits in, is that glazing material.
Thank you.
All right, here, again, here's a total failure. The sash on the left, this is actually supposed to have a small angle to it, where it's circled at. So the horizontal piece is your median rail, and the vertical piece coming up is your stile. And where you see that little pin sticking out, that's not supposed to be like that. So if you have a sash that looks like this, it's in poor condition. The one on the right, that's the middle of the sash, of the top sash, and what has happened, and this is common, it's starting to come out of the, that is the mutton that's coming out of the median rail. So if you remember the little video at the beginning where I had the sash and had the mutton in the middle, that's what you're seeing right there. You're seeing actually the top sash, median rail starting to come out. And that's because things that contribute to this are, one is the sash locks. You should always use your sash locks. It helps keep the window closed, and it keeps that sash lock, the top rail, excuse me, the top sash median rail keeps it, because gravity just does its work.
Yeah, it gives it a little bit of support so it doesn't start to sag or pull away. Kind of like what's happening here is that it's pulling away from that mutton, from kind of hanging. Mm-hmm.
Right. And over time, where this top one will sag, it pulls away from the glass, and then you lose the water seal and you get water into your windows. So if you start to see water, you'll notice that they're pulling apart a little bit. That's definitely something to keep an eye on, because over time that will continue to do that, and eventually that will fall, and you know, may or may not take your glass with it, but you'll certainly have like a gap that will let water weather creatures in your home.
And also that gap happens on the top of the glass. I've seen that too, where everything is down at your median rail, but you look up and you got a gap like that at the top of the glass. So that's something else to look at. All right, this sash on the left, I just considered it in fair condition, because the window looks good. I don't remember if I had access to the outside to be able to see this window from the outside, but look good. The median rails weren't lined up. The bottom sash may have been trimmed a little bit too much whenever it was in there, and that's why it's sitting a little bit lower than your top sash. On the right, again, this is going back to this whole casement set. They look good to me. They just need some priming and painting before it gets worse. So again, this is the stage where you go out there, put some primer on all the glazing, and make sure you lap it up on the glass and paint it. I mean, even if you do the primer only and never get to the paint, you've done something to prevent that glazing from coming out.
Yeah, and I think there's the important piece is that your paint seal, and having that paint where it has a little bit of a lap, like a 1/16 of an inch lap on the glass, is your first water seal. So you have that, and that protects your glazing. Your glazing is your secondary water seal, and then you want to make sure that the glass is back bedded to keep, you know, to prevent, you know, air and moisture getting in as well. But it's really important to maintain your paint, because that's your first defense against water getting into your windows.
And we actually have a question regarding priming. It says, what do you suggest using to condition very old dry wood before priming and painting? Is there any special primer you recommend?
So we recommend using, or what we use for really old dry wood, we use what we call 50-50. And it's half boiled linseed oil, 50% boiled linseed oil and 50% mineral spirits. And what that does mix, we brush it on and you continue to brush it onto the sash and you'll notice that the wood will just draw in the oil. So the mineral spirits opens up the pores in the wood, and then the boiled linseed oil puts that oil back into the sash or the wood, whether it's a door or a window or whatever. And you do that conditioning and you let it sit. And typically you let it sit for, an hour or so overnight before priming with a good oil-based primer. So you want to make sure that you do use a high quality oil-based primer when you're priming, because that will help your paint to last longer.
Yeah. And like you said, that's the first layer of defense. If you could just get to the primer and get that exposed wood or putty protected and covered, that's that first layer of defense that will help with any other maintenance issues.
All right, these windows, I really like these windows. They look horrible, but what's good about these windows is they're untouched. There's the putty or the glazing is failing. No one has gone over here to put any caulk or anything to it. They're in really good shape. Yes, they need to be restored, or really, the homeowner can probably get away with removing some of the glaze and some of the paint, and just kind of do some patchwork with glazing or a glazing compound, and then prime and paint if they don't want to go into a whole full restoration. But the sashes are solid. There's no rotten wood. I think we're restoring one of the sashes, but I wanted to share these pictures because this is a perfect example. These windows need maintenance. When you see your windows like this, they need maintenance. If you look all the way to the right, that's mostly flaking paint on that oval. It's not glazing loss, but on the left, you're starting to see where the glazing has come out, and it's starting to fail, starting to fall out. So that needs to be reglazed. Homeowner can bare minimum, they can put glazing, some type of glazing compound, whatever they want. They can do that, save their window. Again, not for cost.
Yeah, so this is still at the place that the homeowner can kind of do those small repairs, and maybe there's no actual structural issues that might need a professional. We have one homeowner that was asking, when, if we're going through these assessments, and I think you kind of started off with like the easy ones, and we'll get to where we're really going to need a professional to come in and maybe replace portions. But I think it'd be nice to kind of just say, like, this is still at a homeowner level. At this point, there's everything's on YouTube, including this video. So, hopefully we can help people make those repairs. And then if, there's always, shops within the city, just like yours, that are making those repairs for people.
Right. I think that's the important part. Like, someone that has a DIY desire and like has an interest in that, as a homeowner, you can fully restore your windows, like, from start to finish. If they're in this condition, like, these are perfect to have, from a homeowner perspective, where you can take them apart, you can remove the glazing, you can redo the glazing, and then prime and paint and get them back in the openings. There's plenty of resources. John Leake has a book, Save America's Windows. Steve Jordan has the Window Sash Bible, that are excellent resources for step-by-step for how you do that. They're both really awesome guys. You can email them or call them, and they will talk to you and answer questions. There's also for someone that wants kind of a more in-depth step-by-step, there's also the window preservation standards that are available that really walk through the different methods and kind of get into a lot more technical details about how to do this work. And then there's plenty of resources. We have classes. I know that some of the other folks here in town that do this work also do classes, and we'll work with folks to help, show you what you need to do in order to work on your own windows.
Yeah, and I think that's a goal for us too, is to host some more in-person, maybe smaller scale classes where you could really do with people and showing how to do that sash. They could bring a sash and work on it at a, at a more personal level. And that was something that, I mean, I know a lot of people would be interested in, again, having that DIY savvy person that can do it. You're still at that level here.
But like with this sash here, or these windows here, I scrape off the loose paint, get some type of glazing compound, and put it in there and paint it. That's it. It's that simple, where you can prevent it. And these are beautiful windows. You can prevent these windows from being costly in the future. And
Right.
that's our point in these windows is that they can be done by a homeowner at this stage.
I have another question here. We just had our windows reglazed. The person that was hired to do the job was supposed to use an oil-based primer and then paint the sashes. I have noticed now that many of the glazing surfaces are beginning to show a black mold type growth. What can be done to remove what appears to be black mold? Thank you.
So this is a tricky one. We're talking about glazing. Now, personally, we use linseed oil-based putty or glazing, and we add zinc to it. That's our process.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, you might be able to sand it. You may be able to bleach it. Helm has a product, and I don't know the name of it, that you can paint on your glazing. That's a mildewcide, and then after that, you can. It works as a primer, and then you can finish paint on top of that.
And just go over it again.
Yeah.
Yep.
But more than likely, we do not use this product, so I don't know, but they use
Right.
this product. It might be the DAP product, because some people like using DAP, but I don't know if they have a mildewcide or not. So we add zinc to ours to make sure that we have that in there. In addition to that, the finished paint has a mildewcide. So and if you use it when you get your finished paint, make sure that you have that added to the finished paint. These are all little things that we try to do to prevent the mold.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we can provide, Anna, the product that we use.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because I think that if you clean it with the water and Clorox, and later on in the slides we have what the mix is for that,
Mm-hmm.
then apply this, the mildewcide that goes on it, and then prime and paint it, then that should hopefully help to reduce or slow that growth.
Understood. Thank you.
So in these particular photos, these windows are actually in fairly good condition. There are a couple of things. With the one with the rope, it has both a rope that's been painted as well as one that's fraying. So that's really something that you want to look at. And rope and pulley are a fairly common balance system. But there are others, you may have a tape balance, which looks like a little metal strip that runs down your window. There are spiral balances. Some folks have chains. More modern windows have a jam liner. So it's a plastic or metal compression fit that holds the window in place. So it's always a good idea to inspect and take a look at your balance system once a year. Opening and closing your windows is the best test if your balance system is working. If you can't open and close your windows, then that's kind of your first phase maintenance. Because by being able to open and close them, you can really see what's going on and find out, okay, do I have water being trapped underneath the bottom sash, and is it getting into the sill? Are there other concerns happening, to really understand what's going on with your windows in that standpoint. So if your ropes are painted, if they are fraying, then they're ready to be replaced with new rope. Or if you've changed, they're painted, as long as they're still working, then that's great. But if that they may need replacement, because it's, paint is great as long as it's where it's supposed to be and not in places it's not. And then the picture on the right, this is a piece that we wanted to highlight because when you look at your window, sometimes you see gaps, and it's not all gaps are bad. So for some, it's a question mark of looking at it and saying, okay, is there a gap because my window's not going all the way up and it's not meeting at the meeting rail, and maybe it needs to get pushed a little bit further up, or there's something going on for why it won't stay there. Sometimes it's the window stop or the parting bead has twisted and needs to be removed and reset. In some windows over time, as the house settles, they twist. And we'll see this where the sashes have started to twist, and it's something as simple as getting some foam and pushing up in there to weather strip to like provide a seal to help with air coming in, where it's not, you know, it's not a detrimental piece to needing to be fixed right away. But it's certainly something to look and question and say, okay, there's a gap. Why is there a gap? And really kind of think through that it's not something more serious, like the issue with the meeting rail failing, or, you know, that's also an indicator that the ropes that would hold up that sash have broken, because you can't see the ropes when that sash is all the way up. So that's also a sign that, you know, maybe what's supposed to hold the window up has started to fail as well.
We had one homeowner had submitted a question before we had started our webinar, kind of describing exactly what you're saying, is that, you know, that she feels like she's tugging or trying to open her sashes. They're not just opening smoothly. And she's, you know, afraid because of, like, you know, because of that rattling that the glass may fall out or break. And it sounds like there's like maybe some paint sticking from the ropes, or maybe her weights, one of the ropes are snagged, or the weights aren't properly, might have just fallen off. But that's something for that homeowner to definitely look for, like what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
And if it's a bottom sash and she has access to, well, she does have access to her sash cords, you can look at the sash cord where it goes up to the pulley and make sure it's centered, and also grab the sash cord and tug on it. I mean, if she tugs on it and it just comes out, that means she's lost the weight. And if she tugs on it and it pulls back, that means the weight's there.
Right. And one of the other pieces too, when the glass is glazed into the window, there are glazing points that are put in. And those glazing points are put in to help hold the glass in place while the glazing putty sets up. And it's a good thing to know, like if you do glaze your windows, that putty doesn't get hard quickly. It's meant to harden over time. Like the linseed oil based putties that we use take well over a year to get fully, like starting to get hard, where if you put your finger against it, it's not really going to push in. So they're designed that way for that slow cure, so that they don't crack and they give you that nice seal, but they also hide little points. So if you do some work on your own windows and reglaze them, be aware that you're going to find some little things that are holding that glass in place. So it may rattle, but there is, or there should be, those points that keep the glass in, so it's not going to fall out if you start to lose your glazing.
Right.
Here's an example. The picture on the left is an example of where the median rail on the top sash is coming away from the buttons. So it's starting to bow, and this is the beginning of a problem. And that may be an easy fix, where they can use their lock and the lock catch for the sash, and it should be able to hold it in place. Not forever, but right now at this point, it's coming. This is a sign that it's giving way. Now, when some sashes are assembled, the mutton bars are actually tied into the median rail, and with a pin, same way that the rails and the stiles are pinned together. So that may have been a rusty pin that may have failed, or I don't remember seeing it close enough. I can't tell you if it had caulk or glazing, but it looks like it's glazing from this picture. So, but when you see a bowed rail, that's an issue coming. Now the gap at the bottom of that same picture, you see that little bit of gap on the bottom rail and a sill. People go back and forth. I think it's okay as long as it's tight. and it's consistent, I feel that's okay. If you're not getting water in, don't stress over it. But if the gap isn't consistent and it's big on one side, you may have a sill that's out of whack. In other words, due to settling, your sill may be lower on one side and then the sash is open. But also you'll be able to see that at the meeting rail because the sash will be a little bit higher. So the picture on the right, that's actually foam that's filled in the gap between the top sash and the lower sash. And what they did is they filled it up with foam and then they primed and painted it. So you can see where I was pulling this the sash out, I've actually damaged the foamy tape, paint tape. I don't know what you want to call it, but if you have a problem at the meeting rail, don't foam it. There's a bigger problem somewhere. It's either the top sash is lower, which I feel like that's the case in this situation, because the balance system has failed, or there's something else going on. So when you see something like that, and your top sash and your bottom sash at the meeting rail are not lined up, you have something going on. So again, most of the time, it's either the balance system failed or possibly the home settlement.
Right. I think one of the big pieces of with both of these where the meeting rail is getting offset is if you do the maintenance to ensure that your windows will open and close properly, that the balance system is functioning as it should, then that helps hold and keep that together, and that you're using your locks, and then that saves from repairs like this, to where you see this kind of damage. So, just doing that, what's referred to in if you do Google searches, it's like, functional maintenance or mechanical maintenance of your windows. It's that piece of like, okay, they're working and you're testing it and you're figuring it out. And then, that balance system is what helps defeat gravity, and helps keep things right where they're supposed to be, so that everything stays lined up and it doesn't create future issues like needing to replace that bottom meeting rail on the top sash, or having a gap where you need to fill it with, or feel you need to fill it with foam and paint it because you've got air or water coming in. So this is an example of a good one. This is very beginning, early maintenance. The paint has started to peel back and needs to be repainted. The culprit for why this paint is peeling back, because it's new paint, is that the painters that applied it used either blue tape or the paint on masking when they painted, and then they removed it. And what that does is it cuts the paint line. So one of the pieces that we mentioned earlier is the paint is your first defense against water. And it's really important that when you're having your windows painted, or anytime you're painting, glazing, whether it's in a door or window, that it's hand painted and that there's that small lap on the glass, and that they're not using blue tape or some type of masking, because it leaves an edge that the water can over time get right up under and it'll peel it right up. And that's exactly what we saw in this instance, that they use some type of masking or cut that paint seal, and then the water just got right under it and lifted it right off the glazing.
Oh, this is a good one.
So this is a great example of something that looks wonderful painted and it looks like it's solid. And this is why it's also great to like spend some time and like walk around your windows and like open and close them and touch them, take the time to do that, because it looks like this is solid. But then when you touch it, it's like a sponge. The wood underneath it was completely rotten, and the paint was hiding. It was very well painted, with a very great paint that held it all together.
Again, here you have an example. The top sash, the top picture, they just needed maintenance, and the homeowner had us redo them, and we did them, and the sash was not in bad shape. It didn't have a bunch of rot, but I believe most of it, which I don't remember a bunch of caulk in it, but the glass came out easy. So that's all that contributes to your window of the sash being in good shape. And at the bottom is a picture of it restored, and it was easy peasy.
This next one is another example of spray foam has its purpose, but not in windows. The spray foam was used because there was a gap between the top and the bottom, and you can see in the top corner, there's daylight that's coming through where that top sash has dropped. And in the restored version, you can see how you don't see very much of that thick top rail anymore because it's fit tight on that side, and everything lines up. I think one of the pieces and what I'm highlighting on the window that's complete is that there appears to be a crack in that glass, and that piece of glass was broken. And I think it's great to know that if you have really cool historic old glass that's cracked, there is the potential for repairing it. It can be epoxy repaired to seal that so water doesn't get in anymore. You will, when the sunlight hits it just right, you'll be able to see it. But for the most part, it disappears most of the time in those repairs. But don't feel like if your glass is cracked and you've got like this beautiful, really cool piece of colored glass, that you're going to lose it. There is the possibility to be able to save that.
And we try to save it as much as we can. We really do. So all the casement windows look like this one. I think this is the one on the left is one of the worst. Again, if you look at this one, actually, what's pretty neat about this, that's probably original glazing in there. You see how there's no glazing on that casement at all, and you got that one little piece on. Put the cursor right here. Yep. So that's one little piece of glazing right there that's left. Really, we scraped these down, put them back together, and they look good. We didn't have a picture of this exact one, but picture on the right is a set of casements that were in similar condition. But the point is here is that, again, the homeowner or whoever had this house before this homeowner didn't put any caulk or anything, and kind of saved it, to be honest with you. There wasn't a tremendous amount of rot in these casement.
Right.
And use before and after.
So again, and this is to show kind of that, I think that there's a bit of a perception that if the windows look really bad, that they need to be replaced. And I think the message that we're trying to get across with this picture is that, something can look completely terrible and be easily brought back to original. And in the picture on the left, it has the green glass in it. You just can't tell it's the green glass because of all the paint and all the other things that are on it. But that glass was there and was able to be saved. So, don't let the initial appearance of something make you think that, oh my goodness, that there's no saving this. There's nothing that can be done. I need a new window. It very much can be saved. The way that windows are constructed and the way they come apart, like you can take, the lower piece is rotten. Well, you just replace that part. And then the other parts are fine and can continue to serve. I think the biggest piece and the reason that we try to save as much as we can is because the wood that's in those windows is so old and grew and was so dense and is so much heavier than the wood today that it provides like an added insulation quality to it because of its thickness and heaviness, and it lasts so much longer. And I think too, it's we noticed that on a lot of the old stuff, if a termite has the option of new stuff versus old, they eat the new stuff and they leave the old stuff alone. And I think it must be too hard to chew, in that perspective. Like, so there's a lot of pluses for hanging on to that old, the original sashes, indoors in your home.
Yeah. Before you get there, we do have some questions that maybe is a good transition to and get you to those bullet points. Just I will say from the Q&A, we have a lot of homeowners here that want to save these windows, and they're kind of asking, you know, some of them want to know, is there a better time of year to repair windows in place?
We have a climate here that kind of allows us to work year round. You know, certainly for certain things, if you're doing things in place when it, you know, the rainier season time for us is probably, you know, you want to avoid that if you're doing that work in place. You know, for the most part for us, you know, we pull the windows, do them inside, and then put them back when they hit a certain phase. If you're, you know, spot glazing and you leave it, depending on the product that you use, you need to leave it exposed, you know, for a couple of weeks. If you're using an oil-based one, if it gets rained on, it's not going to hurt it because the oil will repel the moisture. And then you just need to make sure that it's good and dry when you go to prime it and then put your finish paint on it. So I think a lot of the considerations if you're doing work on your house in place is more of, okay, is this weather that you would paint in? And if it's not, then you need to wait.
And
yeah,
you do use a product called Aqua Glaze. It dries, supposed to be within a couple of hours, but you have to prime or paint that product immediately.
Right away.
You cannot let it get wet because it's actually a good example of what happens when water gets underneath the paint, because it will erode the Aqua Glaze out. So if you use Aqua Glaze, because it's fast, make sure you prime or paint that ASAP.
Yeah,
and we actually had a question regarding the aqua glaze.
It's a water-based glazing compound that is exceptional if you have a broken pane of glass and you need to fix something on the fly, or you've got putty that's falling out, and it's easy to work with, it's easy to tool. It's a great like homeowner product. Because it is a water-based product, if it mists rain on it, it dissolves it because it's, you know, introducing that water again. So that you have to be very careful about, you know, the weather, and need like a nice hot dry day like today.
All right, and then so I have one homeowner. I think we talked a little bit about insulating existing windows, maybe some options to make them a little bit more energy efficient.
Yes. So for weather stripping, so the weather stripping that we do is we have a couple of options. And you know, the best piece at a minimum, if you can add a silicone bulb to the top of your top sash, and at the meeting rail, and then at the bottom of your bottom sash, that gives you those seals in those three places to help with air infiltration. There is a step further that you can go, and there's weather stripping that we use called Q-Lon that goes on the side, and that's a nylon encased foam. You'll see it on your doors. So if you look at, you know, a newer door, it's got that weather stripping on it. So then that allows for a seal all the way around, and then there's additional seals because there's going to be a little bit of a gap where the window sits against the parting bead. And then there's additional little corner weather stripping. We work with Phil Robinson here in New Orleans. He custom makes those little corners, and we can put those in place, and then that gives you a good seal all the way around.
Yeah, I think just trying to eliminate as much air and water that's coming in is going to help that make your buildings a little bit more energy efficient. And I mean, some other things is just adding, you know, shutters, sort of shading so that you're not getting that strong light. There's a 3M film, I think, that you could put on the inside of your glass that will kind of create that low E glazing, but not be something that completely changes the look of the window from the street. It's something that is acceptable to, if you're living in a historic district, that, you know, can be done without causing any problems with that process.
And something that it's not talked about much down here, if you don't use your windows, put a storm window on it. And that
True.
If you're not going to open and close your windows, you like your old windows, put a storm window on it. It's at that point, you get to that same R value as what's that? The double insulated.
Oh,
That
the
double glazed.
insulated glass unit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you literally have 2 layers of glass. That's something to think about.
Right. And wooden storms, like they're, you know, you don't, most people think of storms and they think the aluminum pieces, but they're, you know, traditional wooden storms are out there. You know, there are folks that build them. You can talk to mill workshops that do them. You know, those of us that do this work also build them so that they match with your home. So they blend in, so they don't just stand out where it looks like you've got a storm window. I think a great example of that is the Fresh Market on St. Charles. They have storms on their windows, and you really have to look closely when you drive by to realize that there's storms protecting the historic windows in that building.
Yeah. Thank you.
So some do's and don'ts. Please do not pressure wash your windows. By pressure washing, the force of that water will get underneath your glazing and your paint. It'll break the paint seal. It'll often, if your glazing is starting to loosen, it'll get underneath it and you're pushing water inside that area. If the paint has started to fail, you're also forcing water into the wood. And that is the culprit to start rot. We do recommend that you clean your windows annually, but do it with a brush and a water hose, not with anything high powered. If you do see mildew or mold, a solution of 75% water, 25% Clorox bleach is the right solution. Don't go heavy handed on the Clorox. It can do damage to your glazing, depending on the glazing that was used, or vinegar. Vinegar is fantastic for cleaning. We've already talked about the painter's tape and the liquid mask of why you don't use those, you know, and what the results of those would be. You know, again, don't caulk your windows closed. Use a weather strip. You know, have the stops adjusted in order to tighten your windows up so that they don't rattle, that air is not getting in. You know, caulking them closed traps moisture. And when you trap moisture into something, it will over time rot the wood. That's just what water does. You know, it's important to not leave your windows unlocked when you have them closed, not only from a security standpoint, but because it does give that support to the meeting rail and helps hold things together and keep it nice and tight. You know, don't paint your balance systems. You know, I get that it's a piece of trying to make everything blend into the frame, but it does impede the function, you know, for that. And certainly there are lots of different balance system options. You know, we use a sash cord that does not have red dots in it. There's other sash cord that has red dots that, you know, so there's options there. We know that, you know, the homeowners we work with don't like the spotted sash cord because you can see it. So, you know, certainly think through that. And again, open your windows. You know, they're meant to open and close. It helps you identify so many of the problems before they become bigger issues that you need to invest much more into. And I think the biggest thing is don't replace them. This is a picture of a high-end wood replacement window of a company that we will not mention. This window was installed, the homeowner confirmed it had been installed for about a little over 25 years. And this is the failure we saw after 25 years. All the other windows that we've showed you earlier in the presentation from a condition standpoint were all hitting 100 years, if not older. And none of them had reached this state. So I think it's important to understand that what you have in those original windows is a better quality material than what you can get if you were to replace your windows with a more modern replacement.
And I think something to point out here is that you're really seeing that the structural elements of the window are what's deteriorating. And so that's really when we had mentioned earlier that you have to call a professional to come in and either replace the rails, and those are the big pieces of the window. Those shouldn't be the first ones to be deteriorating. And that's kind of what you're seeing on that left sash, and where they've replaced that bottom rail at the right side.
And something to think about too, like this is a solid piece of IGU glass. Those are just applied dividers on there. So that's a big piece of glass just waiting to come down.
Yeah, and
A heavy piece of glass too.
right, and these aren't designed to come apart. So for these particular windows, we can't take pieces
Exactly.
of these apart and rebuild them the way that we could take the other ones apart. And we actually built traditional windows to go to replace these. So we replaced the replacements with original, traditionally built windows. But it's a, if that's something that you're considering, just be aware, of how they're built, and that, really dig into that a little bit before replacing your original windows.
Yeah. We had a comment in here actually from someone that had mentioned that their landlord replaced the windows and kind of regretted it. They've kept the sashes, and they're asking, is it possible to replace the new windows with the old ones that they saved, or is it too much trouble? But you already answered the question, that it is an option and that it's something that can be done.
No, it can be. Like the way the replacements work is they take the original frame, they knock in the pulleys if it's rope and pulley traditionally, and then the insert just gets put in. So that can be removed. Now understand that when you do that, then the casing, and then there's a lot more of additional work that needs to happen, but they can, if you have the original windows, they can be put back in. That's something that a professional that knows what they're doing, can restore those back. And the interesting piece is, like, the cost of restoration is equivalent to, and a little bit less than what the cost of a high-end wood replacement window is. But it's going to last you much longer than that, 25 to 30 year point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So quickly, because I know we're running towards the end of time, we'll talk a little bit about doors. And this is an example of how a door comes apart, and it comes apart very much the same way as a window.
An old door.
An old door. Yes.
Yeah.
They're meant to come apart and for pieces to be replaced in them the same as your old windows.
Door on the left is an old door, and you can see the failure in the buttons of the door, the horizontal blue circle there. All that was replaced, and then just the gap where it was cut too much to make it fit. And also, they had all the glazing on the inside. We flipped the door around so that the glazing was on the outside, because what led to this failure was the water was getting trapped into the profile on the outside of the door. The doors on the right, you can see that they're sagging a little bit, and on that, of course, you got that gap in the middle, and then on the bottom right-hand side, it looks like that rail has come away from the style of the door. And if you guys notice that I'm using the same terminology on the doors as the windows, because most of your horizontal pieces or referred to as rails, and vertical pieces or your styles. This was actually the door, the first picture. This is the doors. So the doors had a lot of deterioration on the bottom. You can see that, and you can see where somebody had kicked in the panel. So we went in, and actually we milled 2 new styles for the doors because they were in such bad shape. But again, we saved it. This goes back to, you can save it if you want to save it.
Right.
And the biggest thing is with the old doors is they're meant to be rebuilt. Your new doors are glued together, and pretty much, in my perspective, is that they're meant to be discarded after you have damage or you've messed them up. And
this is a great example of, you can have very little and still save it. And this is another kind of extreme example of, we had one door, the other door was gone, but we were able to, you know, take what was there and save it, and then build the batch for it, to restore the look of it. And the same thing, like one of the windows was gone. You know, this kind of gives that full view of how the traditional historic that is in a home really gives a character and a soul to that building, that if a replacement is put in there, it just diminishes that. So I guess the biggest piece is looking at and saying, okay, when is it time to do maintenance on my windows? So some of the pieces, and we've kind of talked through this as we're going through all the different condition assessments, it's really looking at, you know, what condition is your glazing in? Like, how does your paint look? You know, will the balance system work? Can you open and close your windows? Are you getting condensation on the inside of your windows? You know, it's common to see it on the outside, especially this time of year with air conditioning going and it's really hot and humid. You shouldn't be seeing it on the inside of your windows. You know, are you getting water on the inside when it rains on your mutton bars? You know, feeling your windows and seeing, are they soft? Is it solid? Drywall under your windows being wet after a rain. You know, the sagging and the meeting rail drops, like looking at all of these pieces and saying, okay, do I just have one or two of these things, or am I seeing a lot of these things at once? And that will kind of, like, the more things that you check off this list of saying, okay, I've got this and I have this and I have that, then it's time to start evaluating and saying, okay, what can I do to delay hiring a professional to do maintenance? And then what can I do myself in order to bridge that gap until, you know, you need to bring in a pro. And these are some points of, you know, I think it's critical using that oil-based primer. That really is a core to making your finished paint last longer. The fungicide additive is big, especially for here. If you have a cracked piece of glass, use clear UV packing tape. Gorilla Tape is amazing. You can put it on the inside of your window. It will seal it until you can get around to having that piece replaced or the window restored. Using the self-adhesive V-Seal weather stripping around your windows to help stop drafts. One of the big things that we run into is that we have homeowners say, oh my God, I'm having water come in. Use painter's tape. This is one of the few times that we recommend using painter's tape. Mark the window with the problem, the date that you see it, where the water's coming in, because when you have a pro come in to take a look at it to see what's going on or try to figure out what's happening or what needs to be repaired, that gives them a lot of great information to know exactly where to look. When we see window sill decay, so say that there's a little bit of a rot in your window seal, but it's not to a serious extent, but you've got some water. A fix to buy some time is using the blue masking tape and painting over it to seal it. It is a temporary fix. It will buy you time. It is certainly not something that you want to have and you do for long term. The same is true, like over time, if you have a window that's rotted in the corners and it's starting to come apart, you can use one of those L metal plates, you know, to screw that joint together. It buys some time. And then when it is time to restore it, then a pro can either do Dutchman repairs to replace that joint, or it may be that that stile and rail need to be replaced completely and they'll mill new parts to replace those that are too badly damaged. And again, you know, scraping off that loose peeling paint, repainting it. When you have putty failures, you know, knock out the little pieces that are loose, put in some new putty. You know, if it's linseed oil based and it's cracking, you can actually rub linseed oil on it. It will rehydrate the putty and it'll allow you to, you know, reseal, refresh it, and then you can paint it again.
that was a trick that you taught me. When I reread that earlier, I was like, masking tape on the sill. That it makes sense. It's something that's reversible and can just create that initial seal for someone that can't get to that repair immediately.
Right. It keeps the water from doing more damage than it already has. And it, especially in your sill, it like helps protect your drywall or plaster, especially if you have a plaster wall. Like that's it really helps to protect the other components, you know, deeper in your window and your wall. And the last piece is when you've reached that point of, okay, the maintenance is beyond what you as a homeowner feel comfortable doing, and it's time to hire a professional. These are some of the questions that we as homeowners ask when we're hiring folks to work on our home, not just our windows, that are important, just general pieces to ask quite a few of these things. Like, I think it's really important that the contractor or the professional that you're working with, that you're comfortable with them, that you feel like they understand what you're looking for, and that, you know, they understand and you have a conversation about, okay, well, what is the budget? You know, is it something that you need to do in phases in order for that to work with your budget? What is your time frame? Is that going to work with their time frame? You know, understanding that there are a handful of folks that do certain of these preservation trades, and a lot of us are booked, you know, further out in time, you know, so it could be several months before you can have somebody that's available to work on your windows. So bear that in mind when you're looking at what condition they're in. You know, ask for referrals, find out other locations that they've done work that you can drive by and see their work. You know, one of the best examples is to see what somebody's completed and see how it's weathered time. Understand who's going to do the work. Is it the person that owns the company? Do they have employees that are doing it? You know, is it both, or do they sub out their work to somebody else? One of the very critical things, especially here in New Orleans, because all of our houses are old, is lead. And you need to make sure that they are RRP certified, meaning that they've gone through the training and know how to protect you and your family from lead paint. They need to understand what that means. They need to understand how and set up the precautions, because a little bit of lead paint, like a very tiny pinch of salt, is all it takes for lead exposure to have an impact, especially on children. So that's a really critical thing if you have somebody working on your home with any paint, whether it's your windows, doors, you know, walls, you know, confirming if it's lead paint and how they're handling that. Find out what kind of putty or glazing that they use. Is it linseed based? Is it elastomeric? You know, what are they using? And ask them if they bed the glass. That's important to keep condensation from forming inside, because it gives you a nice tight seal. It also keeps the glass from rattling. So it's important here from an insulation standpoint. Find out how they remove their old paint. Do they hand scrape? Do they use a shaver that will take the paint as well as a layer of wood? Or do they use chemicals? And chemicals, if that is something that they use, you have to understand how they neutralize those chemicals, because those can do damage to the wood, and kind of, you know, reading up on that. Understand the scope of work, and most importantly, what's not included in the estimate. It's important to not assume that because something's not listed in the scope that it's included. So it's good to understand what is or what isn't. It's also good to understand whether or not the price, the estimate they've provided you, is a fixed estimate, or if it's a time and material, that it's a general estimate and at the end of the job there may be a difference. So it's good to understand that way there's not you know, shock at the end of it when the final bill arrives and it's different than the initial estimate you were provided. And then understanding what kind of deposit they may need. I'll let you talk to the replacement.
Let's see. All right. So what's important here is, because what I've been running into is a lot of cope and stick replacement like those. So basically, cope and stick, I think it's important that if someone's gonna build you a new sash or a new window, that it should be mortise and tenon. Mortise and tenon is your traditional joinery. Cope and stick, it's not gonna last. I have a sash back there that, they try to nail it together and it didn't last. So we're gonna rebuild it the right way. What type of wood is used? Very important. Again, what Valerie touched on earlier was that the older wood is dense, and we are using, different people, and I've used Spanish cedar, and now we're using sapele for some of our new builds to replace the replacements. But for our historical work, we use old growth wood. I think that's important, that you find out what they're using. So, and then the insurance and information, of course, you want to make sure that they're properly licensed and insured.
Yeah, and an example, we had a customer that had called us that to take a look at some work that someone else had done, and the person had provided them with an insurance certification. And when they called the insurance company to file a claim because they had damaged their home, they found out that the insurance certificate wasn't valid, and that it was a forgery. So it's really important that even if the pro gives you an insurance certificate, that you verify that certificate is valid, that it's in effect, and that it belongs to the company that you're working with. And I think one of the other pieces that most folks don't realize is that if someone's working on your home, and the cost of the work is over $7,500 for at least window and door work, we are required to have a license to do that work on a residential property. So we go through licensing through the Louisiana State Board. Anyone that has a state board license, the state confirms that their insurance is in place. They confirm that they have workers' comp insurance. Like, there are all these checks that they do. So you can also feel a bit at ease if you're hiring someone that holds a license from the state. And
this is extremely helpful. Sorry. We've got, everyone's just excited. They've got questions are still coming in, but we'll get to those. I just kind of want to give a warning that, I think we're good with questions. That'll keep us busy for a little while. I want to make sure that Valerie and Gus, we're respectful of their time and everything. So I'll let you finish up, and then we'll get to the questions that have been submitted.
Great. Well, and that's all. We appreciate everybody being here and participating in the questions. Like, that's, we want to answer whatever you guys have, and however we can help save as many windows as we can.
And no panicking, please. I know some homeowners gonna go out there, look at the glazing and see the caulk and say, "Oh my God, it's there already." Don't worry about it. Just keep an eye on it. That's it. Just keep an eye on it. And I think we put a bunch of pictures to show you the worst case. And the ones that you see that are worst case in your home, just keep an closer eye on that one. And just don't. We're getting a lot of calls once the window or the sash has completely failed, and like Val said earlier, like we're booked out a few months, and I have the compassion, but it's tough. We may not be able to get to you. May have to go board you up or something like that, and then you're gonna be dark. So just keep an eye on it, and you're like, hey, you know what? Can you come look at this? And anybody will go look at it and say, yeah, it might be a few months or whatever. But I think that's the whole point of this is to educate them. So don't go out there and look at all that caulk and panic. Just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and I think that's where your tips, to delay the maintenance, like if you do have someone coming out and they say that we can't make it for 3 months or 6 months, there are options to just add that extra layer of primer for now, and just, again, just make sure that there's no water getting in, you're not trapping water. That's kind of the biggest issue, is that somebody goes out and buys that bottle of caulk and then just puts it on. It's a really hard thing to reverse, and it actually just traps moisture and creates rot. So a lot of the questions, we have a couple questions that were a lot about the balancing system, about the ropes. So we have one homeowner that's asking that they have a house in Gentilly Terrace where a couple wood windows need replacing of the ropes and weights. Is that something that you, or would you recommend hiring someone? And is that something that could be done in place, or does that have to get done out at the shop?
So that is to replace the ropes and, well, if the weights are attached, right, you just need to replace the ropes. That's something that a homeowner can do. Like if you've got DIY, you can certainly do that.
Mhm.
You do need to remove your windows in order to access. So it's kind of funny. Your windows should have a door, and there's a door in your windows that you can access your weight. And by pulling the stops, you can pull the sash out. It gives you access. You pull the parting bead out. There's videos online, and we can share those. I think both Steve Jordan and John Leake have videos about how to take your windows apart to replace your ropes. We do, we've had homeowners contact us. We'll sell you rope. We'll tell you where to go get it if you need, the right rope. Be careful. Don't go buy sash cord at Home Depot. You want to make sure you get the right sash cord, buffalo sash cord that has the right core in it so it doesn't stretch. A lot of the spot cord and original sash cord has been in there for 80, 90 years before it needs to be replaced. So it's, usually if you replace it, it's once in your lifetime that you need to worry about that.
Right, definitely use the right products because it's a little bit more hands-on than just painting. But and then some other questions kind of related to that was just windows, the operability of a window, making them open and close a little bit more easier. You all know that the house settles. So they say, can you really fix the mechanical issues of the houses that have settled? I've gotten some crooked windows in my 125-year-old house. I have restored about 3 of them, but they're not mechanically perfect, which I attribute mostly to the frame not being square. So I think people just want to know, are there tips that you have to open windows a little bit more easily, or square out those window openings?
The first thing, like if we go to a home and we see that, we ask the homeowner if have they fixed the settlement issue. Because it's kind of difficult to answer that because sometimes you have to add to the sash. It depends on how bad the sill is crooked.
Right.
So in one situation, I had to add to one side of the sash and take from the other. And basically, I had like a trapezoid window. But the whole thing was just crooked, and the sash couldn't go up about halfway. About halfway up because it would wedge. So it just depends on how bad it is. Just if you start cutting on your sash, just take a little bit off at a time. Because in that particular situation, I had to add more in order to cut just to make it work. Because if not, it would be the situation like that one picture I showed you where they cut too much off the sash and then it would fall out.
Right. And I think you had even shown one that had a little gap at the bottom that, if you're not getting that water intrusion and maybe the air infiltration isn't so bad that it's, you really don't have to mess with it.
Yeah. No. And we call that, like, the technical term for that is racking, is what we call it. And if the window has done that due to settling, then that's not something that you feel comfortable, like, because you have to take the windows off and you've got to do measurements. Like, you can, certainly reach out to a pro, like there are, carpenters that can do those adjustments to get them to where they will fit and function within the frame, even if the frame is twisted. But it is important that if your house is settling, you've addressed the settling issue before you really start to mess too much with the windows.
And is there any product that was grease up the pulley system? Is there something that you could put that maybe can help the cords move a little easier in that?
The what you use on the sides of the sash to help them go
up.
Oh,
you can use floor wax, and there's another one that Mr. Bill told us about, Glazing or Slippies. But I usually use floor wax, something you pick up at the home center.
Oh, I think we had Mr. Robinson himself was asking about slideys. So that sounds like something maybe homeowners could look into.
Yeah, you can use the Slide or I use the Johnson floor wax. It's hard.
And then let's see here. We've got a couple, these are mostly all related because it's either how do you address windows that are painted shut if the prior owner has caulked windows shut on the exterior? What do we need to unseal them? So I think we've all kind of lived in a house that maybe the windows are not functioning. They've been painted shut. And then of course the question that's going to always be asked is like, what is the cost?
Let her answer that. I just
Yeah.
I just do the work. But so
Cost is dependent on the project.
so
Yeah.
here's something to think about, because we just told you everything that happens once everything's caulk closed and painted closed for an extended period of time. I've been in situations where I've opened up windows and I only open up 2/3 of the bottom sash because the bottom is stuck, the bottom rail's there because it's caulked in place. Before you go in there, just take your time. Take your time, cut along the parting bead in your window stop. So you're gonna have to remove your window stop first. And if it's on the first floor, it's easy to get to. Go to the outside of your window and cut the caulk out. Use a sharp knife whenever it starts getting hard to cut. Change the blade and pry it away until you can pry it open. And then if you go to open it, putting a pry bar, whatever you want to do at the side or the stiles. Don't try to pry it at the middle because you damage something. I don't know if that answered the question, if I over answered it.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of project that someone with that is ready for a DIY project that really wants to get hands-on and maybe start one window at a time, just so you could really get a feel for how, there is a lot of work to it, and depending on the material that was used to seal those windows, it could be more or less problematic or interesting, keep you busy. I don't know. That's one of those questions that I agree it's hard to give a straight answer because you never know what's going to be behind that painted ceiling and how much repairs are going to be needed once those windows are functioning again, or if those cords need to be replaced and the weight system needs to be reconstructed. So it can be done, and that's for sure. And that's what I think.
And if they do tackle on their own, as soon as they open that window, they need to check that seal. Very important.
Yeah. All right, awesome. We have one person asking if you guys can come to Alabama.
Alabama.
There's a window restorer in Hilda Dent is in Alabama. I'd have to look at where, but there are window restorers all over. I'm a board member of the Window Preservation Alliance, which is a national network of that. They have a list of restorers all over the country on their website that are members. But I can't remember if Hilda is a member or not, but we are aware of her. So if you put us in contact, we can provide her information, and she's based in Alabama.
Yeah, there's a lot of local people from New Orleans that are on there, and again, it's nationwide, so you're able to find different people all over the place. Let's see, we've got 2 more questions and then we'll let you guys go. One person is asking about, do you have any opinions on spring bronze for weather stripping?
So we have a personal, my husband has a personal view on that because when you install spring bronze, it has 100 little teeny tiny brass nails, and he has bigger hands, and it makes that a joy to install. So it's a good weather stripping. It will work, and it works well. It's been used for a very long time. We prefer the silicone and the Q-Lon over spring bronze. One of the pieces is that the more modern weather stripping, when you weather strip the window, you don't see it. Whereas the spring bronze, the way that you have to install it, you really have to put a little bit above the sash so that when the sash goes all the way up, it doesn't catch. And then pull that spring bronze back off. And then the other piece is if you do need to do future work to your windows, you've got to work around that spring bronze to get access to the door in your window. If you need to access your window weight in doing that. So like bending and pulling and moving it, it's a personal preference. It works great. I mean, the more bends that you can put that air has to move around, then that slows down your air infiltration. So any weather strip is good weather strip, you know, in our viewpoint.
And so someone was asking about that silicone weather stripping that you had mentioned, if you could spell out the name. I couldn't hear you.
Sure. So the one that we use on the side is called Q-Lon. So it's the letter Q, L-O-N. And then the silicone bulb, and since Bill Robinson's on, if he's still on, he can probably ping and chat the specifics of that. He's taught, he is our guru, and he has taught us the weather stripping side. So we use the same products that he does.
Yeah, I know Bill has a bunch of videos just on the different types of caulk, and those can all be found on his website. And I'm sure we could do another class with him too, just on that topic. So he's got silicone from Conservation Technology. Order online or on the phone. He added it to the chat. Thank you, Bill. And then one last question we have, and this is, I think, for the exterior. Do you ever flash the top and sides of the windows when you remove the casing for repairs? How does one best address water intrusion from the sides and top?
We really don't fool with that much as far as the putting the flashing on. We mainly focus on the sash reps, everything from the interior stop to the exterior blind stop. So we have had a couple of situations where we were asked to do that, and we really don't want to get into that part of the window.
Yeah, I know that I think it's in the HDLC guidelines that recommends for the exterior, for the casing on the exterior, that you can caulk around the casing, and that can kind of create a sealant on those sides. You really want to have a drip cap at the top of your window that's going to shed the water away from the building and away from that window, and then have a sill that's really sloped, properly sloped, so that again you're moving that water away just with those natural slopes. But I think around the casing it would be safe to use the you know, a caulk there, but not on your window sashes. And I think I answered. Okay, sorry, going through just one last time. But I think we've got them all. This was a great conversation. We've had about 25, 30 questions answered tonight. We have a lot in the chat, just lots of thank yous, and you know that they feel. We had one, you know, your reassurance and information is so valuable. I'm ready to start learning more. So I'm excited that we could have these kinds of conversations and really help people, you know, tackle these issues, because I think it can be overwhelming to have. And as you mentioned, it's really not so bad.
No, it isn't. And you know what? If someone wants to work on one of their windows, just pick one weekend and just take your time with it, and you'll figure out it's pretty easy.
Yeah. And thank you again, Valerie and Gus, for hosting and presenting everything. This was a great presentation. I'm glad it'll be on our website for people to go back and watch if they have any questions. We've added their contact information in the chat, and we'll have it up on our website as well. And have a good night, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.